folks, this is yeoldchestnut.com, yeoldchestnut inn, rather. Yeoldchestnut.com is the domain. This is a service of Conservative Christians of Tennessee where we kind of do long form topics that we don't have time to fully flesh out on the radio. I'm Matthew and Shawn Graham is the managing director of Conservative Christians of Tennessee. We have Pastor BJ Newman on with us. Hey, Pastor.
Hey, good to be chatting with you guys again.
And then we have Pastor Jeff Wright on with us as well. Hey, Pastor Newman is a Presbyterian pastor. Pastor Jeff is a Reformed Baptist, Southern Baptist pastor. And just to give you a little bit of an intro to what we're talking about undue delay of marriage, and it makes people really, really mad. Apparently, when you say that undue delay of marriage is a sin. On the radio show, we talked about how I would, in some cases, this is a wisdom issue, but the Westminster Shorter Catechism says that undue delay of marriage is a sin, that it's a violation of the seventh commandment. And I saw a graph recently, Shawn, if you can bring that up real quick. This graph that it's just Americans who were married by the age of 30. 30 is not a magic number, but this is just a reference point they reference. So you can see in 1975, it was a little over 90% of women, over 80% of men were married. And it's just gotten lower and lower every year to now we're in 2025 and under 30%, looks like right around 25% of women are married by the age of 30. And it looks like about 15% of men are married by the age of 30. So I just posted that on Conservative Christians of Tennessee's Facebook page. And I said, undue delay of marriage is a sin. And it made people so mad. We didn't have like an out of this world engagement as far as total numbers. We had about 80,000 views on that, which is on the lower end for something. I didn't think this would get near 80,000 views. I just thought this would kind of be the one and done thing. And, but 3.5 thousand reactions, of which over 3.4 thousand of those or more were laugh reacts. And then 3,100 comments, and at least 3,000 of those were just angry, sarcastic comments. Pastors, what is that alone? What does the reaction of that say to both of you? I'm curious.
I mean, for me, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. I think what we're doing is we're swatting the cultural bee's nest that needs to be swatted. The reason you get such a hostile, negative response is because you're touching the thing that in their deep conscience, they know they're out of bounds on. So, if this weren't a consequential question, people ignore you. But because it is a very consequential question, they start lashing out. They know that we're touching the thing with a needle that needs to be touched. And so the reaction is just simply explained by the fact that we're over the target.
Well, I appreciate how concise that answer was. I can't ever do that, so forgive me. 5 years ago, I would have said we had a culture addicted to casual sex. Now I would say we have a culture addicted to pornography. But really the theological root of the thing is that Satan hates babies. Something we've talked about at church, that so much of God's kingdom moves forward with the birth of a promised child. And you have the image in Revelation of Satan waiting for the Christ child to be born so he can devour the child. I think that's a satanic motif. If you go Moses, you go Samuel, you go Jesus, God is just very pleased to move his kingdom forward with babies. And that's true at the most important figures in scripture. But it's also true of the children that show up in regular households. And so we're satanically compromised.
Yeah, and the Bible begins with a marriage of sorts in the Dominion Mandate. When God makes help meet, Jesus' ministry begins with a miracle at a wedding, and then the Bible ends with a wedding. So marriage itself, and then there are so many references throughout beyond that, but marriage itself is it's the motif of the Bible in a way. Maybe not the motif, but definitely a motif. So,
in ancient
marriage.
In ancient theater categories, you had either a tragedy or a commedia, and a comedy ended in a wedding, and that's how you knew it was a happy ending. And we live in a comedy, not in the laughter sense, but that the story is working out well. You can imagine the enemy wants to disrupt that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that we look at the Bible as, in this cultural moment, we treat the Old Testament as if that's not really part of our Bible. We don't talk about that. That's really not what we can teach. But there's so many stories about seeking marriage and seeking a mate and seeking to become a good family giver or provider or all of those establishment things. And I got to think, guys, is that part of what's broken here? We're not teaching the Old Testament, because I feel like we really talked about this stuff a lot in the big part of the Bible.
Well, I'll jump in here,
Shawn?
I'll jump in here because one of the distinctive features of Presbyterianism is covenant theology. And when Matt, you said that marriage is a theme that runs through, what you're seeing there is God made a covenantal relationship with his people, right? There's the creation covenant with Adam, and then there's, of course, the covenant between Christ and his church. And so when we engage in marriage, what we're doing is mimicking the way that God engages in a relationship with his people. So that's the sort of nugget of what you're kind of touching on. And so it's unsurprising in a culture that hates God and hates the scriptures that they would likewise hate the covenantal relationship that mirrors that. So that's to me not surprising. Does the fact that we don't teach the Old Testament play into it? Well, of course, but I think it's just because we don't teach the Bible seriously at most levels. And again, culturally speaking, one of the principles that the scriptures highlight is that we become like that which we worship. And so if we worship the triune God, if we worship Christ, we become like Christ. We will begin to be self-sacrificial. We'll give ourselves away. We'll be loving, those kinds of things. But in our particular culture, we love ourselves. We're self-lovers. We're ones who adore individual freedom, individual expression, individualism, me. And you know what? Marriage is kind of hard, right? Because you have to get up early, and you have to help your spouse. And if you're a man, you have to go to work, and that means you have to sweat, and that means you might have cuts on your hands, and that might mean going to bed late at night. And if you're a wife, that might mean you have to care about somebody. You have to care for somebody that isn't maybe always the cleanest or the smell, that smells the best or whatever. You have to sacrifice yourself for somebody else. Yeah. And so it just runs directly contrary to our cultural milieu.
Mm-hmm. A lot of what you just said really reflects on the worship that our society gives towards a delayed, an ongoing and never-ending adolescence, this running away from responsibility. And I've said many times to young men, I seek out young men to try to mentor them. And I say to them all the time that the two things that matured me the most rapidly was first getting married, which was a pretty big boost for me, the biggest boost I'd had in my life up until that point. But secondly, and this was infinitely more maturing, was having our first children, and then everyone is just a little shot in the rear in the maturity. But we worship adolescence, and we do everything we can to delay it. And by worshiping it, we sort of cut the legs out from underneath our young men and our young women. We prevent them from maturing to the point they need to become even more mature. Is that a big source of the undue delay of marriage?
Well, I would say I'm not sure that we even know how to think clearly as a culture about adolescence versus adulthood. I'm out in the country. I listen to a lot of country music. If you listen to country music, a man becomes a man when he sleeps with a woman. That's the motif. Sort of broadly speaking, a man becomes a man when he gets a job that affords him the kind of vehicle that he's always wanted to drive, or has the passport stamps he always wanted. I mean, we've kind of even where you're right that we're adolescent obsessed, but we've also rebranded adulthood as adolescence, self-indulgent, self-centered choices. That's supposed to be adulthood now. I mean, we're so completely off the biblical map on this. We don't even know how to talk about it.
Right. I'm losing everyone here. I don't know if it's me or if it's you guys, but I will go ahead and ask the question just for folks that didn't hear the radio show. Let's talk about the concept of undue delay of marriage and where that comes from. It comes out of the seventh commandment. The seventh commandment in Exodus 20:14 just simply says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." And as we noted on the radio show, Jesus himself taught that harboring lust in one's heart breaks the spirit of this law. So that's an extension. That's a case law sort of expansion on that biblical law. Not an expansion, of course, but just carrying it to its logical conclusion. Presbyterians have a catechism. They have their shorter catechism teaches, quote, "The sins forbidden in the seventh commandment are entangling vows of single life, undue delay of marriage," which is where this show comes from, and having more wives or husbands than one at the same time. So we asked on the show why we've stopped preaching on it. What would it look like if we started preaching that again?
I think one thing we would lean into is just the demands of the Christian faith to mature in the faith. And part of maturing in the faith is maturing into your God-given calling. So earlier, Pastor Jeff was talking about the desire to extend adolescence. Extending adolescence is nothing more than just simply refusing to take responsibility for what you're called to take responsibility for. And so part of what we would need to start doing with young men and young women is giving them more responsibility sooner. And we've got this weird idea in our heads as parents that we want to allow our kids to just not have any responsibility for years and years. I know I was 23, almost 23 when I joined the military. I didn't join until after college. So I was a little bit older. And when I showed up to basic training, it was you and the drill sergeant. But I'm hearing stories now that there are parents who are calling the base, checking in on their kids. I haven't heard from my son. My son called and was crying. And I just think to myself, if in the United States military, we still have parents trying to tell drill sergeants how to navigate, like, get out of the way, Mom. I love you, right? Like, you pray for your kid, but like, you have to let him go. And I say this as one who's got a 17-year-old who's a senior, who's moving into adulthood. It's terrifying. So I'm not going to pretend like, right? But it's the sort of rule that we had in the Newman home is if you're capable of doing it yourself, we're not going to do it for you. If you're 6 years old and you can tie your shoe, you're going to tie your shoe. If you're old enough to make your bed, we're not going to make your bed. If you can get yourself dressed, right? Yeah. Mom and dad, you have to push your young man and your young woman to learn how to do these things. And if what that does is that primes the pump for them to learn how to take responsibility at appropriate times. Yeah. The biggest argument that I have pushed back against me when I tell people we need to start thinking about marriage in late teens, early 20s is, well, what if they're not ready? And I say, Mom and Dad, that's up to you to get them ready. And unfortunately, we're just not doing a good job about that.
Yeah.
Well, and to Matthew's point earlier, who was ready? I mean, part of marriage is maturing each other. Yeah. What would ready? I mean, ask the you would want to ask the person positing that, were you ready? And if not, what did you learn once you went ahead and did the thing, right? Like, we just, again, I hate to keep circling back to this. We're in such a degraded position. We don't even know how to talk about this meaningfully.
Yeah.
And we don't really do a good job of bringing it to our children. And that's one of the responsibilities as an adult, is being able to step into these conversations, figure out what is healthy for our children, and then assess the situation. We had a friend, through a lot of connections and stuff like that. I remember their son was ready. He was young, able, very capable of being a young man in a household. Did he know what to do to go be married and pick that wife? No. But did I look at him and say, he has been told that it's okay to go find your bride and do that. And so he was encouraged to do that. And I think the funniest thing happened when they got married. He found a bride, very capable. They've had a great family, multiple children, great relationship, love everything about it. But they were so young, they couldn't even get a rental car when they went places. So nothing in our culture works when you break this format, and everybody looks at it like it's odd or peculiar. And that's okay by me, because I look at these kids that, everybody else says, oh, they're too young. And I think, what a glorious testimony they're going to have of a lengthy marriage, enjoying multiple generations. They'll get to live with their grandchildren for a long time. I think there's so much reward to that. And we're cutting ourselves short when we don't engage in this conversation and teach our kids this is something that's not only an option, it's a blessing.
Yeah, I love that, Shawn. And I'll say this. One of the ways that we can, I think, shift the cultural conversation around this is learn how to praise marriage and to extol the glories of it, right? I had a very interesting interaction with a pediatrician one time. So my daughter, we've talked about, her having babies and being married since she was a young girl. And when she was like 6 or 7, she's like, Dad, I want to have 12 babies. And I was excited. I'll take 12 grandbabies. And that number may have creeped down a little bit. And I told her we might have to have a conversation with her husband first. But, the whole idea, though, was that like babies were good. And we were at a pediatrician one time, and she was like getting weighed and height and measured and all that stuff. And she said, I want to have 12 babies. And that woman looked at her and she's like, girl, you don't want to do that. You better wait until you get as old as you can. And just went. And it took everything I had not to like pull my hair out and say, woman, what are you doing? So afterwards, I sat down with my daughter and I was like, no, we don't think that way. And I have constantly spoken to my boys. I have 3 boys and 1 daughter, and basically made the idea of family formation something good and glorious and praiseworthy. And that, again, is running against a culture that degrades that. Yep. And here's the thing. Young men will go where there is glory to be found. And if that glory is on the baseball field or on the soccer field, or if that's on the music world or whatever it might be, they'll chase after it. So here's what I want to do. I want to praise the families that are having children, the men who are providing for their wives. And guess what? The men will go running for that. I'm confident of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A few thoughts that I'd like to add are just, first of all, we have this expectation, talking about you not being ready. I think the Bible in many ways recognizes that spouses aren't going to be ready. Now it says Titus 2 comes to mind. There seems to be an expectation that there are going to be young women that need help learning what from the older women, really basic things. Love your family being the biggest one that comes to mind. And we talk about this natural ability of women to love their families. And that's definitely a thing, but there's also a part of it that's supernatural. And a lot of the way that supernatural miracle happens is that God uses the older women in the church, or rather wants to use the older women in the church to teach the younger women. I've had a hobby lately of asking people how many Titus 2 women their church has. And recently, and I've only found one pastor out of asking about a dozen in the last couple months who said, oh yeah, that's this lady in my church. So there may be some reservation on the church to push against undue delay of marriage, simply because they realize that they don't have people in their congregations who are going to come in and teach these younger women how to love their husbands and their family and be a good wife. And that's a tragedy, and it's something that we can fix. The other thing is, going back to responsibility, my wife and I don't base our child-rearing practices off of secular studies, but everybody loves a little confirmation bias, I think. And there was a University of Minnesota study done 40, 50 years ago that looked at the age which you gave children responsibility in the home and what the impact was. And people that were more independent, self-starter, go-getter type people started their chores at home by the age of 3 or 4. If you started those chores in the home at the age of when you were a teenager, there was no difference between the control group that did that and the control group that didn't. So they didn't get that extra self-starting motivation. So that plays into the maturity process. And I love what you guys said about making sure that your kids do things. I'm a trail life dad, and one of the things that Shawn has really been pushing is to us that I've told some of the other dads, and some of the other dads are latching onto it, is no adult ever does what a trailman can do.
That's right.
And we don't like that, because that means it takes supervision. That means it takes feedback. That means it takes training. That means it takes time. But our young men know the square of learning now. That they know that first the adult does, and they watch, and then they know that they do it together, and then they know that by the time they get through it, their child is doing it on their own. I just proved I don't know the square as well as I should. But
well, Matthew, think about that. We're not modeling that square. We're not showing adults that are going into marriage and showing the experience and modeling that, so that the kids can come behind you and say, you know what, I want that. I want what they have. What we're modeling to the entire culture is that you don't have to get married. You can have sex without marriage. You can live together. Yeah. You can shack up, go to college. You might find somebody else later that you really love, and then you can go get married. That it's all backwards. We have put the fruit before the root. We haven't taught that the kids can stand on their own, be independent, and be wise, and then learn their ways into maturity. We don't show that like we were talking about earlier, the adulting is not happening. And the problem is we don't have adults doing the teaching. So how do we expect to raise adults when they're all infantile anyway? This is a bad precedent for our culture. We've got to have adulting coming back in. We've always said, raising our kids, that we're not raising children. We're not rearing children. We are raising up adults. Our job is to raise up the next generation of adults. And I'm, got 2 that are in the adult phases now, and praise the Lord, I think that's true. With all of their friends that I see around, the ones who put responsibility on them, those kids all seem to pick up their boots and move. And that's what we want. We want to have adults that we've trained them enough in the Word that they have a foundation. Do they have a theological degree when they leave our house? No. Do they know the Scripture is the source of truth in their life? Yes. So as they start those things, they can venture out, and you have a little more faith that they're not going to, move off to a, crazy college lifestyle like the rest of society is pushing. That, to me, is what our goal is, raising adults. That's our job here. We're tasked with the spiritual maturity and well-being of a soul, an eternal being. And we got to be able to model what marriage and proper, all that kind of stuff. They're not seeing it, so we can't expect most of the kids in the culture to repeat it.
Well, and you're raising adults that are supposed to be your brothers and sisters in eternity.
Yes.
Right. My sons should be my brothers around the throne room of Jesus.
Yes.
You talked about sort of the teaching responsibility. I think part of the stop to that is that we're so safety obsessed. So yes, teach your kids responsibility, but also let your kids be in situations where it can go really poorly for them. And if it does go poorly, it's on their shoulders, and they're going to have to learn to deal with the consequences.
Jeff, we say it all the time in our house. This is the safest place to fail. We have a safety net here. If you want to fail, this is it. Because when the real world hits you, there ain't no safety net when you get out there. We're here to help you. This is not harshness. You're not going to fall flat on your face. You're in the family. We're training here, and we're loving on you. And that, I don't think that mindset is there. Everything is soft landings and helicopter parenting, and we got to
parenting. Take all the obstacles out of the way.
Yeah, we got to stop that.
Shawn, I'll jump in on here. I think we've actually inverted the normal pattern of how we raise kids, which is when they're in our home, we don't let them experience any kind of suffering or any kind of difficulty or stress. But then when they're out on their own, we're like, see, you're on your own. I made it on mine. You're on your own. Matt and Shawn, I know last time I was on the radio show, we talked about how we can sort of prepare our kids for the future. Part of restoring the idea of a younger marriage and ultimately having kids at a younger age is training our kids to recognize that they're not in this alone, right? There's, sort of the stereotype that the boomer kicks the kid out when he's 18, he's on his own. I'm not giving you any money or anything. And go see our last show that I was on where we talked about, no, we need to really be setting them up for success. But in a Titus 2 manner, right? If we want our kids to get married in their early 20s, we can't. Which of us knew how to take care of a baby when they were born? You don't.
Exactly.
You go to grandma and grandpa. You go to aunt and uncle. You go and you say, "Hey, how do I do this?" kind of thing. And guess what? That sort of like family network. It honestly, I'm a bit sympathetic to the anxieties that some young adults face when it comes to getting married, because the fact of the matter is many of them are kind of on their own. They're on their own economically. They're on their own socially. They're on their own intellectually. Yeah. How do I? Well, it's like, no, come on, surround them. I've told all of my kids, so I want you to stay close to home, right? I'm not going to get mad at you if you get an opportunity, but if you can build a life here with us, let us babysit grandkids so you can get some sleep. And that the notion that biblically speaking, the Bible knows nothing about kids leaving home and never reconnecting or anything. Like, it's just an unheard of thing, right? Yeah. And I think that's a big feature in teaching kids, like, hey, you can actually take the risk of getting married, of having kids, of getting your own home, because there really is kind of a safety net here. And you've been trained in our home in such a way that you're resilient. You're not going to, right? You're not going to fail. But the fact of the matter is we're here to support you in that. I think that goes a long way.
Well, to come full circle, it is sort of a vision of the good life, right? Yeah. What's the vision of the good life that sets up in the formative grammar years of your life, right? And so is the good life financial wealth, free travel, sexual variety? If that's the vision of the good life, you're kind of cooked from the beginning.
Yeah.
But if the vision of the good life is, and I'll just be real straight about this, getting to have babies, then all the other stuff sort of reorients itself. Children are a blessing from the Lord. The appropriate gateway to receive that blessing is marriage. We've kind of talked about, I don't think any of us want to say our family's a model family, but when we talk to our kids from a very early age and we talk about their adult years, what will I do for a vocation? What will I do? From the earliest days, we frame that as when you're a daddy or when you're a mommy.
That's right.
Because that's we talked about this earlier off air, I believe, but when we talk about adulthood, it's not casual sex. It's not having the sweet car. It's you get to have babies. And what's the route that gets you to that blessing? And that's the one that I think we should probably posit. But then when you have all these alternative good life images, I won't stay here too long, but Shawn, you were talking about, like, do we have Titus 2 women in our church? Well, what we have told lots of women who take their faith seriously is what you need to do is go to seminary and get your biblical counseling degree or wrap up an MDiv. That's what serious Christian ladies do. And it's an entirely alternative scheme to, actually, you're going to be positioned well to help young women follow in a path of godliness that you can help them map out.
Yeah. Yeah. We do a terrible job discipling women in the church. The more women's conferences we have, the worse it gets. The more women's Bible studies we have, the worse it gets. The least shepherded gateway into the church right now is through women's Bible studies. Elders do a terrible job.
But we sell good books. I mean, we sell lots of them. I didn't mean to say good.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's just so much trash that makes its way in to the church. We've left our women vulnerable because we do not screen the material that they use.
That's right.
And I mean, you ask most elders about that, and they're shocked that that's even a concept. That they would be responsible for the material that their women's Bible studies used. But yeah, so but bringing this back full circle to marriage. So we've talked about the good life. You know, we really, even when we talk about these alternate lifestyles, like is a DINK, dual income, no kids. That was a really popular phrase maybe 2 years ago, and there were, you saw a lot of little cute videos about it. But there was always a sadness in those to me, because that's the ultimate. We criticize consumerism a lot. And I actually have no problem with people buying things and consuming them. That's just economics. Consumerism that has no productivity behind it is the actual problem. If there's nothing lasting behind it, you know, our families, not only do we not make kids, but we don't know how to make things. There's so many trades that we should be teaching our children, I guess, is really where I'm going to teach productivity. We've abandoned our children by and large to a public school system that doesn't train them to do anything specifically. And in the 80s, when I was a little kid, I remember being told by every adult, you can be anything you want to be. And there was a real subtle message behind that to me that I didn't really even realize I was hearing until just a few years ago. But the real message was, you can be anything you want to be, but you should know I'm not actually going to make sure that you can do one thing. So one of the most grave responsibilities we have to our children, to our young men, is making sure that when they leave the house, that they have a way to put bread on the table, that they have a way to provide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And recently at a men's group that I'm a part of, a guy with a cabinet business asked if he was, if anybody knew young men that were looking for work, because he was having trouble finding them. I was not surprised that the strongest demand. I asked many people, reached out, and I was able to send him three young men, the names of three young men. They were homeschooling families. They were intentional about making sure their kid had a. We used to buy apprenticeships. And now it's just, you can be anything you want to be. What do you have to say to that?
Matt, the reason we did that is because we used to care about the future. We used to care about what happened in the generation after we left. And because we're such a self-absorbed culture, well, we're just dead. Who cares what's going to happen?
Great point.
And honestly, I think that issue that you just touched on, Matt, is really why this topic matters, right? There's a one-to-one connection between delaying marriage and the number of kids that we have. You get married earlier, you have more kids. It's just as a trend. And as we see all across many parts of the world, particularly the Western world, but also Japan and Korea and places, the birth rate is plummeting. And people have honestly asked me before, BJ, what do you think is the biggest pressing issues that, you know, the Western world is facing, or that America's facing? What are the biggest political issues? So the destruction of the unborn in the womb and immigration, you know, basically replacing a population that won't replace itself. And both of those are connected to the decline of population, which is connected to the disparagement and delay of marriage. So when people ask me, BJ, why does this topic matter so much to you? Well, the future is basically predicated on us fixing this problem. And inserting into the minds of our young folks the future, you have a responsibility to continue your family lineage. You have a responsibility to the future. That makes sense to a young man that has 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. To a dink or to a single guy that's just traveling the world, you have a responsibility to find the coolest restaurant in the nearest town or whatever. And learning how to have that future-oriented idea will then start making people think, well, I want to have a economic, impact. I want to have a career. I want to start training. I want to start learning. And that's the good life. The good life is saying you have a purpose that will stretch beyond your lifetime, and that even has, through the gospel, eternal implications. Brothers, that's the story right there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's a fifth commandment issue.
Yeah,
right?
Amen.
I have fathers to honor and carry on their work, and then I need to hand it off well.
Yeah. Well, do we have time to go through some of the responses we got to the Facebook?
Oh,
thread?
you are opening up a can of worms, man.
I want to do it because some of these are good and they deserve a response. Some of them merit a response, and some of them are just.
That we can air all of the responses that they deserve, though.
Well,
one of my favorite
did a couple
activities is dealing with social media trolls. So I find that immensely comedic.
I grew up as a social media troll. I really.
Well, I've done a fair share myself, but I really like the thoughtless ones.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, are you going to be able to show some of these, or do we just want to read them?
I'm just going to let you pull them up. There's just too much garbage on there. When I pull it up, I look at all these responses, and some of them are kind of vile. So
yeah. So I'll give us some good ones. I'll skip the vile ones. So this one. How is it sinful to wait to get married to someone I love and cherish? And what would you guys respond to that?
So I get so enthusiastic about this part that I don't want to step on anybody. But what I would say to that is find someone you cherish and love. Get to it. Stop waiting for this Disney-fied version of true love falling on your head. Find somebody.
Jeff, I've got a glass slipper. Isn't the other one coming in the door tomorrow? I mean, come on, man.
Maybe FedEx brings it. That's such a coping strategy. If you know somebody who's a fit candidate, okay, love and cherish them. Next. You know what I'm saying?
Amen.
This is not a hard question.
Nothing to add there.
Right. Well, the next reply is imagine being mad that other people aren't getting married.
I mean, can they not understand that we're making argumentation from a principle? We are seriously saying the best thing that could happen to our culture right now is for all of these people who don't understand the value of marriage to die off in this desert while we repopulate this with an understanding that's biblical and structured correctly. We are okay with that. And they need to understand that their stance is completely wrong and baseless. It's humanistic based. They have all pleasure seeking, and none of it has a foundation that builds for eternity. It's garbage. And so, we can get upset about their improperness.
Here's what I'm imagining: you being mad when you die alone, and then being mad when I refuse to pay for your long-term care because you squandered your stewardship by going to Paris 3 times.
Oof, man. And I think that is a payday that is going to happen.
It's going to be massive.
Imagine what people are going to be saying when they hit their 60s and they're in the retirement home and they're alone. I mean, there's going to be sitter need. People are going to need sitters in all of these homes because these people are alone and our healthcare system's getting better.
Yeah, or they're going to be suicided by government to harvest their organs when they're 57.
Oh, there we go. That's probably likely too.
Peter Wagner's an account I follow on X. The guy is ex-Army. He was in intelligence, and he wrote once and he deleted it, I think, because it got so hot. But he was talking about this phenomenon, and he said their time of death was called by a Filipino nurse just before they were buried in a pauper's field by a Mauritanian. And it's let's see here. They
should probably stand for something like dying in no care.
Ooh, that's good.
Hey, Matt, let me speak to one of the comments that I saw in there. One of the comments that was up at the top, I can't remember, it said, marriage is a personal decision. Basically, why do you care? And the fact of the matter is, marriage isn't a personal decision. It's a public decision.
Here.
That's right.
Yes.
Here.
How we conduct ourselves in public and how we arrange our society is very much a public matter. We absolutely have a right to speak to this because, as Jeff so rightly highlighted, the decisions that people make do impact us, right? It's just a natural human phenomenon that we are going to always be social creatures. We're always going to care about them. And unless we just become utterly secular and utterly satanic and just let people starve on the streets and die old age, right? That'll never happen. Marriage will always have a public policy and a cultural aspect that we need to be speaking to. And what I try to communicate to people is we're trying to argue that here's the way to live a life that will bring about joy. And we're arguing against this sort of self-centered life that doesn't ultimately lead to happiness. We're trying to make a somewhat pragmatic case, right? Now it's biblical too, right? We're trying to honor God, but we're trying to make a pragmatic case that, like, this is better for you, dude. Like, let's start moving in this direction.
Yeah. Well, and it really just demonstrates how superficial the thinking is.
Yes.
You don't have to be a well-discipled Christian to see this. Y'all probably are familiar that Denmark is paying for people to stay home on long weekends, and they call it "Do It for Denmark" because they want to propagate the nation. Anybody who's paying attention to a minimum degree realizes that these matters are not purely privatized.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's go to this one. This one that you've got highlighted right now, Shawn, that says, "You have any idea how much a wedding costs?" And that's one of my pet peeves. Yeah. I grew up going to Mennonite weddings around Winchester, Tennessee. We had Mennonite friends. Dad employed someone working at a sawmill for him, and I was always blown away at how involved the community was in those weddings. And I think that this might actually be one of the few things that's designed. Like, I think the person presented that as sort of this insurmountable obstacle that points out that we really don't have to get married. A wedding should not be expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. I know. I have a friend who married, and his wife came from a well-to-do family. He was offended at how much they spent when he found out. He ended up coming to terms with it and enjoying it. My wife and I had a nice wedding. It was, I will tell you that I remember the average cost. I won't say how much we spent other than to say at the time we got married, I remember we had a nice wedding for 1/5 of the average wedding cost in that year. I remember the dollar amounts, but I will also tell you that I hope that our church is more involved in our children's weddings, and I hope that we can be more involved in other children's weddings too, because I would love to see that money get put towards something like a house or something like that. But yeah, so respond
Matthew,
to this. Y'all have any idea how much a wedding costs?
The trend today is now, and Jeff was just saying, and he's so right. It's a community thing. The wedding is an event for the community. And unfortunately,
you take vows before God and the community.
That's right. That's right. And the trend in marriages today is to be exclusive. We're going to go to the island, and we're going to, that's going to cost how much to get there? No, well, we don't care. This is where we're going to go. We want you to come and make our wedding exclusive. But they're also limiting the number of invites because they don't want all of the community to come. They want it to be this very exclusive thing. And guys, I don't know about you, but when we got married, the coolest thing was having that stack of presents that everybody gave. And I don't remember half of the people who gave them, but they were friends of family. They were friends in the community. They were friends who wanted to honor my parents or honor her parents or people that we didn't really know, people who had made connections, who wanted to be part of our life and pour into us. Yeah. And unfortunately, this exclusivity limits the community involvement in these marriages. And I think that's a really bad trend that we need to stop.
Well, this is the Disney effect again. So the wife is told that the bride is told this is going to be the greatest day of your life. So it has to take place on a beach in Tahiti with the perfect lighting, and the engagement has to be filmed. I can get you a really cheap wedding. We did a wedding not too long ago for a sister congregation or members of a sister congregation. We gave them our church for free. Our people and their people worked together to provide food for the guests at the end, and they took their vows in front of their church family. These are coping. These are statements of coping strategies.
Yep.
So, Shawn, you've got that one highlighted from Hell and Rain. I
Jesus
first ran
never married.
Let
Yeah,
him
there was
cook.
another-
Let Pastor Jeff cook on this one. Go.
There was another guy out there who said he never procreated. Jesus never married. Jesus never procreated. I ran into this mess with the idolization of singleness and then homosexuality. Jesus was married to the church from eternity past. He never lived a day on the earth as a single man. And the fruitfulness of his marriage is every new believer that comes from a family of believers or a convert. This is offensive to the character of God, the character of Christ, to say this kind of nonsense. And it's incredibly popular. And it tells you how shallow the thinking is on this, because they haven't thought 2 steps beyond what did Jesus do with the days he had on earth recorded in the Gospels. He has a bride. He's been faithful to her from eternity. And it's the
Amen.
most fruitful union the cosmos has ever seen. All praise to his name. Stop trotting this stuff out. It's stupid, and it's beneath the dignity of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Let's hit that Austin Parker one. I feel like Pastor BJ could do well with that one, because that's actually, I don't necessarily take that has to be an insincere question. I think that could probably be a genuine question.
Yeah, I would take this question. I'll read it. Wouldn't a loving God want us to wait as long as it takes to get in the right, healthy marriage? The mistake in this thinking, even though I do believe it is a genuine question, and the right, I mean, I don't know the person or the sentiment behind it, but there can very much be an honest sentiment that says, hey, marriage is serious. I don't want to go into it lightly. I don't want to just do a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. I want to be able to get married to somebody who I think I'll be, compatible with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I would just want to say 2 things. That instinct is good. And you also want to make sure that you are being deliberate in thinking about this. And part of the way you do that is to not do it by yourself. Ask fathers, mothers, aunts and uncles, sisters, brothers, what do you think about this person? If everybody's telling you don't marry this dude, he's a bad dude, then don't marry the dude. But the fact of the matter is, a healthy marriage comes after the marriage. You make it healthy, right? You don't you don't get the sun, moon, and stars to align and everything just magically works. Almost all of my pastoral counseling for marriages is me telling people, if you want your marriage to be healthy, you have to do the work. You have to go in and learn how to love this woman sacrificially. Wives, you have to learn how to respect this man and serve him. You have to learn how to give up your own selfishness. That's where a healthy marriage comes from. And if you don't believe me, go find any couple that's been married for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? I love hearing testimonies of these elderly couples that have been married for decades, and they will all smile and look at you and say, you just got to learn to forgive these people. You got to learn to overlook their failures. You got to learn to sacrifice yourself for their good. The way you bring about a healthy marriage is by learning to love them the way that Christ loved the church, sacrificially, unselfishly, and committed to making what you have work, which is why the covenant vows in marriage say, till death do us part.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
The no-fault divorce has been a poison to healthy marriages. And I'm just telling you, I know this firsthand. I've watched marriages that were in disarray transform because they said, I'm going to learn how to mimic my Lord, and I'm going to learn how to follow him in his marriage. So that's what I would say.
Amen. Amen. If I could just piggyback on that, and I don't want to address it with the kind of hostility I had at the earlier question. That guy's name is Austin. The thing I would encourage Austin, in line with what Pastor Newman has laid out, is don't tolerate the passivity that's inherent in that question.
Yeah.
Just reject passivity. What you said, Pastor Newman, go build that thing. And a young man, the common young man I know does not feel that way about getting the vehicle he wants, be it a truck or a car. He doesn't sit around waiting for some vehicle that's perfect for everything he wants to come. He says, I want that thing. I'm going to go do the steps to have it for myself. So just take that same energy and apply it to something much more valuable.
Yeah. Every one of you guys is in, from what I know, to be a healthy marriage. Shawn's kids are graduated from high school. I'm actually, I think the rest of us have all of our kids at home in various stages of still growing up. But we all understand, I think, that we have to teach our kids. I've realized that only God can make that ground receptive. He can do it a lot of ways, but ultimately only he can. I mean, he one of the ways he does it is through the environment that we provide in our homes. My wife and I have sought to do that. Young men who want to get married are in many ways in a hard spot right now. And I think one of the biggest assets that they can have going for them is being teachable. Where should they be going to learn how to become a man that is suitable for marriage? Because if you're not suitable for marriage, then it's not an undue delay of marriage. Doesn't mean I'm not saying ready. I'm not saying have the perfect job. I'm not saying have the perfect house. I'm not saying have the perfect life plan. But there is a point at which you have to be ready, right?
Yeah.
So where do they go to learn that? You talked about some great households that you guys have come in contact with. Where do they go?
I mean, Jesus said wisdom is proved by her children. And what I take him to mean by that is the people that have accomplished, the things that we seek to accomplish, they've proven themselves, right? They've shown that they can raise children who are believers. They've proven that. So go find a guy who has the kind of life that you want to live and go say, teach me. Just sit down in front of them and have the humility to say, I want to do what you did, right? We do it all the time in sports or in music. We go find somebody that is really good at what they do, and we watch videos and listen to the music or whatever. Do it in marriage. Just go, hey, you've got 6 kids and they're all believers, and you've got a herd of grandkids and they love you to death. What did you do? Teach me. That's what has to happen. Now, in terms of how to make a heart teachable, I think that's a matter of trusting in the Lord to prime the the soil there for sure.
Yeah, I'll throw a word in for the boomers. I think that sometimes they get a bad rap on handing things on, but I've learned a lot from boomers. And I'll say this, what Pastor Newman just said is absolutely right. The context for that would be a healthy church, right? So we hope you would see it in your own family line. We hope it's being reinforced in the church. If it's not in your family line, then the church is the ideal place. It may be a situation where, like if you came up to, there's a deacon in my home church who I learned an incredible amount of being a Christian man from. If I'd have went to him and said, please teach me, he wouldn't have had a category for that. He really wouldn't have known that. He was a blue collar dude. He was a Vietnam vet. He loved to fish. I was into basketball. But what I would do is just hang around him. I try to be at his house as much as he'd let me. Can I come help you with the chores? Can I come whatever? This is my redneck coming out. Can we watch pro wrestling? We did a lot of that in the 90s. I'd go over and watch pro wrestling with him. But rather than approaching him on, hey, I would like a curriculum to walk through with you, just showing up and like helping him take out the trash was a really great avenue. So you might not be able to find a guy in your church who'll be like, yes, we'll meet over coffee for 2 hours every week to do this. Yeah. But if you'll be like, hey, I would like to learn how to change my oil, you can get a whole lot more than learning how to change the oil.
Yeah. Let me help you. But that old Benjamin Franklin way to ingratiate yourselves is to ask them for help, let them feel like they've done something for you, and then ironically people. Well, this has been great, guys. Folks, we're gonna wrap up. This is a broadcast from Ye Old Chestnut Inn. You can visit yeoldchestnut.com. We hope to do more in-depth videos like this from time to time. We don't really have a set schedule on this. Thanks so much, Pastor Newman, for joining us, and thanks so much.
Appreciate the invite. Love it.
Yeah. And thank you, Pastor Wright, for doing this. And if you're near Xenia, Ohio, or near Centerville, not Centerville, Tennessee, Cookeville, Tennessee.
Cookeville, yeah.
I know a good church in Centerville, but you're not near there. Make sure to look look these brothers up. We'll tag them when this broadcast's on X. And Shawn, anything else in closing?
No, I enjoyed it. Thanks, guys, for being honest and sharing. You know, none of us claims to be perfect, but man, it's good to hear other brothers living out the walk with their family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and
thank you all.
one last
I'm
question.
glad I got a chance to meet Pastor Newman here.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. One last thing I want to reply to that we didn't talk to. There were many comments to the effect of the Onion gets better every day. That's not true. The Onion peaked back in 2006 when they ran that story about going over to Africa and renting a bread truck from which they distributed Bibles and had great luck doing that in a starving village. That's when the Onion peaked. Chestnut.com and Conservative Christians of Tennessee have not peaked. So make sure to check that
there you go
for more content later on. Yeah.
Awesome.